Eceptionist insults Don Jr. and Kimberly. The revenge was brutal. Maria Ramirez adjusted her navy blazer and smoothed her graying hair before the mirror in the Trump Tower employee bathroom. 6:30 a.m., just like every morning for the past 20 years. The familiar ritual calmed her nerves. She'd barely slept last night after Jenny's college acceptance letter arrived. Another day, another dollar? She whispered to her reflection, practicing her professional smile. The same smile that had greeted countless celebrities, politicians, and business moguls over 2 decades. The lobby was already humming with early morning activity when she settled behind the curved marble reception desk. Frank, the night shift security guard, handed her his usual report. "Quiet night, Maria. Though heads up, there's some big fundraiser happening upstairs today. Expect a circus." Maria nodded, pulling up the day's schedule on her computer. "Thanks, Frank. Get some rest." She'd barely logged into the system when Sophie, the new receptionist she was training, rushed in 15 minutes late, her blonde hair disheveled. "I'm so sorry, Maria. The subway was a nightmare. And then my coffee spilled and—" "Deep breath, honey," Maria said, gesturing to the chair beside her. "Fix your hair, and let's review today's protocols. We've got a busy one." As they went through the morning briefing, Maria noticed Sophie's eyes kept drifting to the golden elevator doors. "Is it true?" Sophie whispered. "That Don Jr. and Kimberly are coming in today?" "Yes, and that's exactly why we need to be extra careful with security protocols. No exceptions, no matter who they are. Remember what happened last month with that YouTuber who snuck in?" Sophie nodded earnestly. "The one who got all the way to the penthouse floor before security caught him?" "Exactly. Cost 3 people their jobs. That's why we check everyone's ID, no matter how famous they think they are." The morning progressed with its usual parade of suits and stilettos. Maria handled each person with the same professional efficiency. Badge checks, visitor logs, security calls. Some tried to brush past with entitled huffs, but her quiet authority always brought them back to her desk. At 10:47 a.m., her desk phone rang. It was George from the parking garage. "Heads up, Maria. The young boss just pulled in with his lady friend. They seem worked up." Maria's stomach tightened. She'd seen Don Jr. and Kimberly in their moods before. "Thanks for the warning, George." She turned to Sophie, whose eyes were wide with excitement. "Remember, standard protocol. No exceptions." The lobby's glass doors swung open. Don Jr. strode in first, his face flushed as he barked into his phone. "I don't care what the polls say. We need those numbers by lunch." Kimberly clicked along beside him in red-soled heels, also deep in what seemed to be a heated phone conversation. Maria stood, her practiced smile in place. "Good morning, Mr. Trump. Miss Guilfoyle. If you could just—" "Not now," Don Jr. snapped, waving her off without breaking his phone conversation. "Sir," Maria said firmly, "I need to verify your identification before—" Kimberly lowered her phone, her eyes flashing. "Excuse me?" Sophie shrank back in her chair. But Maria held her ground. "Company policy requires all visitors to present valid identification, no exceptions." "Are you kidding me right now?" Kimberly's voice rose, drawing attention from the bustling lobby. "Do you live under a rock? Everyone knows who we are." Don Jr. ended his call, shoving his phone into his pocket. "This is ridiculous. We're here every week. Where's your supervisor?" "Sir, I am the head receptionist and I'm following mandatory security protocols. After the recent breaches—" "Recent breaches?" Don Jr. stepped closer to the desk, his face reddening further. "You think we're security threats? Do you know who my father is?" The lobby had grown quiet. Maria could feel phones being raised, cameras pointing their way. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Yes, sir. I know exactly who you are, which is why I'm surprised you'd object to basic security measures meant to protect everyone in this building, including your family." Kimberly let out a harsh laugh. "Listen to her, trying to lecture us about security. You're nothing but a minimum wage rent, a cop wannabe. How dare you waste our time?" Maria felt her cheeks burn. 20 years of service reduced to this. She thought of all the times she'd stayed late, came in early, covered other people's shifts. The holidays missed with Jenny. The pride she'd taken in her work. "Miss Guilfoyle, there's no need for—" "You know what?" Don Jr. cut in, pulling out his phone again. What's your name? Maria. Let's see how long you keep this job. You're nothing. Just some nobody drunk on a little bit of power. Sophie had tears in her eyes. Other employees stood frozen, watching. Phones kept recording. My name is Maria Ramirez, she said quietly, her voice barely steady. And I'm just doing my job. Your job? Kimberly's voice dripped with contempt. Your job is to know your place. Come on, Don. Let's not waste another second on this person. They pushed past the desk toward the private elevator. Maria watched them go, her chest tight. Security would stop them upstairs. They had to, according to protocol. But she knew they wouldn't. Different rules for different people. As the elevator doors closed behind them, the lobby slowly returned to life. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Sophie touched Maria's arm. Are you okay? Maria realized her hands were shaking. All those years of respect she'd earned, of doing things the right way, of teaching others to do the same, shattered in 3 minutes of viral video that was already being uploaded to social media. I need to take my break, she managed, gathering her purse. Cover the desk. In the bathroom, she finally let the tears fall. Her phone buzzed. Jenny was calling. Her daughter must have already seen the video. The woman in the mirror looked different now. Smaller. But somewhere in her eyes, a spark of defiance remained. She'd followed the rules. Done her job. They were the ones who'd shown their true colors. Maria wiped her eyes, reapplied her lipstick, and straightened her blazer. Her shift wasn't over yet, and Maria Ramirez had never left a job unfinished. When she returned to the desk, her inbox was already flooding with internal messages. Sophie sat frozen, staring at her screen. They've called 3 times from upstairs, Sophie whispered. Mr. Reynolds from security wants to see you immediately. Maria's stomach lurched. Thomas Reynolds had been head of security for 5 years, a fair man usually, but he answered to higher powers. Watch the desk, she told Sophie, smoothing her blazer one more time. The walk to the security office felt endless. Every employee she passed either stared too long or quickly looked away. Her phone kept vibrating. Jenny had now called 6 times. Thomas sat behind his desk, looking grave. Multiple screens behind him showed the lobby incident from different angles. Sit down, Maria. She remained standing. I followed protocol, Mr. Reynolds. I know. He rubbed his temples. That's part of the problem. The videos everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. They're calling it Trump Tower Takedown. Maria's knees weakened. She finally took the chair. It's getting spun both ways, Thomas continued, turning his monitor to show her. Half are calling you a hero, standing up to privilege. The other half. He trailed off. Want me fired, she finished. The company's in a tough position. You did everything by the book, but this is becoming a PR nightmare. Maria thought of Jenny's college tuition, of her mother's medical bills, of 20 years of perfect performance reviews. What happens now? Thomas leaned back, studying her. Go home for today. Paid leave. We'll figure this out tomorrow when things cool down. But they both knew nothing would cool down, not with the internet involved, not with those names attached. In the lobby, Sophie hugged her tightly. You're trending on Twitter, she whispered. My friends say you're amazing. Maria gathered her things, hands trembling. As she walked toward the doors, she heard the whispers, felt the phones pointing her way. More footage for social media. More fuel for the fire. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright. A few reporters had already gathered. Someone must have tipped them off. Maria pulled her blazer closer and hurried past, ignoring their shouted questions. On the subway home, she finally checked her phone. Hundreds of messages. Thousands of social media notifications. Jenny had texted, Don't worry, Mom. You're not alone. We'll fight this. Fight what exactly? She'd done everything right, followed every rule, protected the building like she was supposed to, and now, her phone buzzed again. An email from upper management marked urgent. Maria closed her eyes, swaying with the subway car's motion. 20 years of service. 2 decades of proud professionalism. All undone in 3 minutes of viral video. She thought of Don Jr. Sneering face. Of Kimberly's contemptuous laugh. Of all the times she'd seen others treated this way and stayed quiet. Of all the workers who faced this kind of humiliation daily without anyone filming it. Maybe that was why this video had struck such a nerve. Maybe that's why her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with support messages from strangers. The subway doors opened at her stop. Maria stood, straightening her shoulders. She'd face whatever came next with the same dignity she'd shown in that lobby, even if it cost her everything. Maria's hands shook so badly she dropped her keys twice before managing to unlock her apartment door. The familiar scent of her mother's cooking usually brought comfort, but today it made her stomach turn. "Mammy, is that you?" Jenny called from the kitchen. "You're home early." Maria couldn't answer. Her throat felt too tight. She slumped onto the worn couch, her purse falling to the floor. Jenny appeared in the doorway, still wearing her NYU sweatshirt, phone in hand. Her excited smile vanished when she saw her mother's face. "Oh, Mammy." She rushed over, wrapping her arms around Maria. "I saw the video. Everyone at school is talking about it." "Everyone?" Maria's voice cracked. Jenny's phone screen lit up with another notification, then another, and another. "It's going viral," Jenny said softly. "But people are on your side. Look at the comments." Maria couldn't look. She'd already seen enough on the subway ride home. Her own phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Calls from relatives in Puerto Rico, old friends from high school, former co-workers, even her sister in Florida, who she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. The kitchen timer dinged. "Abuela's making your favorite," Jenny said. "Rice and beans with..." "I'm not hungry." Maria stood abruptly, needing to move, to do something. Her uniform felt suffocating. "I need to change." In her bedroom, she carefully hung up her blazer, the one she'd saved 3 paychecks to buy 5 years ago. Her hands lingered on the fabric. Would she ever wear it again? The urgent email from management still sat unopened in her inbox. Each time she thought about reading it, her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. A gentle knock at the door. "Mommy? Tia Carmen's on FaceTime. She wants to talk to you." "Not now, my amor." Maria sat heavily on her bed, staring at the framed photo on her nightstand. Her first day at Trump Tower, 20 years younger, standing proud in her brand new uniform. She'd been so excited, so full of hope. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Sophie. "OMG Maria, check Twitter right now." Against her better judgment, Maria opened the app. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the trending topics. Number: Trumped Tower Karen. Number: Stand with Maria. Number: Receptionist Revolution. Number: Entitled Trumps. Videos. Endless videos. Some zoomed in on her face as it crumpled under Kimberly's verbal assault. Others focused on Don Jr., reddening features as he threatened her job. Memes were already spreading. Her professional smile contrasted with their angry faces. "Mammy?" Jenny appeared again, this time with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She brought over flan. Mrs. Rodriguez shuffled in, her kind face creased with concern. "Me, Carita, I saw what happened. My grandson showed me on his phone. Those horrible people." Maria tried to smile, but tears spilled instead. 20 years of holding it together, of being the strong one, the professional one, crumbled in an instant. "I just did my job," she whispered. "Every day for 20 years, I just did my job." Mrs. Rodriguez set down the flan and enveloped her in a warm embrace that smelled of vanilla and café con leche. "And you did it with dignity, mi amor? With dignity." Jenny's phone chimed again. "Mom, you're trending in 3 more countries. People are sharing stories about standing up to workplace bullying. You're inspiring people." "Inspiring?" Maria pulled away from Mrs. Rodriguez, wiping her eyes. "I'm probably going to lose my job. How will we pay for your college? For Abuela's medicine?" "You don't know that," Jenny insisted, sitting beside her. "Look at these comments from other Trump Tower employees." She held out her phone, showing a flood of supportive messages. "Maria trained me 15 years ago. Most professional person I know. She's caught 3 different stalkers trying to sneak in this year alone. Remember when she worked through Hurricane Sandy because residents were scared? The memories hit hard. The hurricane, when she'd slept on a cot in the break room for 3 days to keep the desk staffed. The Christmas Eve spent directing last-minute deliveries so children wouldn't wake up disappointed. The countless small kindnesses and major security catches that had earned her glowing reviews year after year. Her phone buzzed again. Thomas Reynolds from security. "Maria, Please call me ASAP, important update. She stared at the message, her stomach churning. Jenny squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, we're with you, Mammy. Everyone's with you. Maria looked around her modest bedroom. At the certificate for 20 years of service hanging on the wall. At the photo of Jenny's graduation where she'd beamed with pride. At Mrs. Rodriguez patting her hand and Jenny showing her more supportive messages. Her mother appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Dinner's ready, Mihija. Mammy hasn't eaten all day, Jenny said pointedly. Maria's mother clicked her tongue disapprovingly. You think not eating will solve anything? Come, food first, then we face whatever comes next. As if on cue, both Maria's and Jenny's phones buzzed simultaneously. Jenny gasped. Mom, Kimberly just posted about you on Instagram. Maria's heart stopped. With trembling fingers, she opened the app. The post showed her behind the reception desk, her face stern as she asked for ID. The caption read, Some people let a little authority go to their heads. Time to remind the help of their place. Number, Trump Tower takedown. Comments flooded in by the second, some supporting Kimberly, but many more defending Maria. The war of words grew increasingly heated. Turn it off, Maria said suddenly, standing. All of it. The phones, the television, everything. But Mammy, please. Her voice cracked. I need to think. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Yes, food, family, then decisions. The internet can wait. In the kitchen, the familiar routine of serving plates and passing bread brought a moment of normalcy. Maria's mother had made her favorite comfort foods, arroz con gandules, tostones, the works. The smell reminded her of Sunday dinners before her father passed, of celebrations and family gatherings, of better days. Eat, her mother commanded, sliding a full plate in front of her. You can't fight rich people on an empty stomach. Fight? Maria hadn't thought of it as a fight. She'd just been doing her job, following protocol, being professional like always. But they'd made it a fight, hadn't they? With their contempt, their threats, their social media attacks. They'd turned a simple security check into a viral moment, a symbol of something bigger. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Thomas Reynolds calling for the third time. Whatever news he had, whatever decision had been made about her job, it could wait until after dinner. Right now, she needed her family, her neighbors, her community. Jenny, she said softly, tell me more about those comments. The ones from people standing up to workplace bullying. As Jenny read stories from around the world, Maria felt something shift inside her. The crushing weight of humiliation began to transform into something else, something stronger. They tried to shame her for doing her job, for being the help, for daring to enforce rules that applied to everyone. But shame only worked if you accepted it. Maria took a bite of her mother's rice and beans, letting the familiar flavors comfort her. Then she picked up her phone and finally opened the urgent email from management. Whatever came next, she would face it with dignity. Not just for herself, but for every worker who'd ever been talked down to, belittled, or treated as less than human. She thought of her father's favorite saying, La dignidad no tiene precio. Dignity has no price. Don Jr. and Kimberly had tried to put a price on hers, tried to buy it with threats and social media pressure. But some things weren't for sale. Mammy? Jenny touched her arm. Are you okay? Maria looked at her daughter, bright, ambitious, headed to college on a scholarship, and managed a real smile for the first time that day. I will be, my amor. We all will be. She began to read the email, surrounded by the love of her family and the strength of her community, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The email's subject line glared at her. Regarding today's incident, immediate response required. Maria's hands trembled as she opened it. Miss Ramirez, due to the sensitive nature of today's events and the ongoing social media situation, we require your presence at an emergency meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Please report directly to the executive conference room on the 25th floor. Do not speak to the press or post on social media until after this meeting. Regards, Patricia Hammond, Head of Human Resources. Jenny, reading over her shoulder, gripped her arm. That doesn't sound bad, right? They didn't fire you in the email. No, Mia, they do that in person. Maria set the phone down, her appetite gone despite her mother's delicious cooking. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head firmly. They cannot fire you for following rules. My son is a lawyer. Should I call him? Before Maria could respond, her phone lit up with a text from Sophie. Oh Maria, the security footage leaked. Someone posted the full video showing Don Jr. and Kimberly completely ignoring the metal detector too. People are going crazy. Jenny was already pulling up the new footage. The security camera angle showed everything. Don Jr. and Kimberly bypassing not just the ID check, but all standard security protocols. The timestamp clearly visible. This changes everything, Jenny exclaimed. Now everyone can see you were just doing my job, Maria finished quietly. Like I have every day for 20 years. Her mother touched her shoulder. Mihija, remember what your father always said about people who look down on others? Maria nodded, tears welling up again. They do it because they're afraid of looking up. The evening wore on. More calls came. Reporters, lawyers offering to represent her, even a few talk shows requesting interviews. Maria let them all go to voicemail. Instead, she sat with her family, eating her mother's food, listening to Mrs. Rodriguez's stories about her own day's working service jobs, watching Jenny field supportive messages from her friends. Around midnight, after everyone else had gone to bed, Maria sat alone in the kitchen. She opened her laptop and began to type. Dear Miss Hammond, I will attend tomorrow's meeting as requested. However, I want to state clearly that I followed all security protocols exactly as trained. My record of service speaks for itself. Respectfully, Maria Ramirez. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she opened a new document and began writing something else, her resignation letter. Not because she was wrong, not because she was afraid, but because sometimes standing your ground meant being ready to walk away. She thought of Jenny's college acceptance letter, still sitting unopened on the coffee table, of her mother's medication costs, of the mortgage payments on their small apartment. Then she thought of Don Jr., sneering face, of Kimberly's contemptuous laugh, of 20 years of service reduced to the help. Maria saved both documents, the short email and the longer resignation letter. Tomorrow, she'd know which one she needed. For now, she finally allowed herself to cry. Not the quiet tears from earlier, but deep, racking sobs that carried 20 years of swallowed pride, of biting her tongue, of staying professional in the face of disrespect. When the tears finally stopped, she felt different, lighter somehow. Whatever happened tomorrow, they hadn't broken her. They'd just shown everyone exactly who they were and exactly who she was. Maria Ramirez, daughter of immigrants, mother of a future college student, 20 years of exemplary service, and not 1 ounce of her dignity for sale. The next morning, Trump Tower loomed before Maria like a giant mirror catching the sunrise. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like metal flowers. A small crowd of reporters stood near the entrance, cameras ready. Miss Ramirez, over here. Maria, can we get a statement? What do you say to claims you were disrespectful? Maria kept her head high, clutching her purse close. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, the navy blazer, crisp white blouse, pearl earrings her father had given her mother on their wedding day. Professional, dignified, ready. Security met her at a side entrance. Jim, who'd worked the night shift for 12 years, gave her a subtle thumbs up as he escorted her inside. You okay, Maria? He asked softly. I'm here, aren't I? The lobby felt different, emptier. Security had cleared most people out, but she could feel eyes watching from every corner. Her desk stood unmanned, no Sophie chattering away, no morning rush of badges and IDs. The executive elevator opened. Thomas Reynolds stepped out, his face unreadable. Maria, thank you for coming early. She checked her watch, 7:45 a.m. 15 minutes before the HR meeting. Mr. Reynolds, my office first, he cut in. There's something you need to see. The security office looked different too. More screens had been added, all showing different angles of yesterday's incident. But there was something else, thick folders spread across his desk. Sit down, Maria. This time, she did. Thomas picked up the nearest folder. Do you know what these are? She shook her head. Security incidents. Prevented security incidents, to be exact. Every single one stopped because you followed protocol. He opened the top folder. March 2023, you spotted a fake ID that got past 2 other checkpoints. The man was wanted in 3 states. Maria remembered. The ID had looked perfect, but something felt off. July 2023, you noticed a delivery man who'd been coming for 3 months suddenly had a different employee number. Turned out he was part of a theft ring. He kept going, folder after folder. Maria sat quietly, letting the memories wash over her. And here's my favorite, Thomas said, holding up the thickest file. December 2024, the Christmas party incident. The senator's son, Maria whispered. Exactly. Drunk, belligerent, trying to get upstairs to his father's event. You stopped him, took his keys, called him a cab, probably saved lives that night. His father sent a thank you note. Thomas closed the folder. The board has reviewed everything, Maria. Every incident report, every commendation, 20 years of perfect evaluations. Her hands trembled in her lap. Sir, the HR meeting is happening right now. He checked his watch. In fact, they should be done viewing the security footage I sent them. Maria's head snapped up. What footage? Thomas turned one of the screens toward her. The footage played silently, Don Jr. and Kimberly approaching her desk, but this time from above. The angle clearly showed them bypassing metal detectors, ignoring security protocols. This isn't just about IDs, Maria. They skipped every single security measure we have in place. Measures that exist to protect everyone in this building, including them. Her phone buzzed. The HR meeting would start in 5 minutes. Mr. Reynolds, why are you showing me this? He leaned forward. Because you need to walk into that meeting knowing exactly who you are and exactly what you've done for this building. They're not just attacking a receptionist, they're attacking 20 years of professional security work. Maria stood, smoothing her blazer. Thank you, sir. One more thing. He handed her a small envelope. This came down from the board this morning. Don't open it until after the meeting. The walk to the executive conference room felt surreal. Employees stopped to watch her pass, some offering small nods or whispered support. Patricia Hammond from HR waited outside the conference room, her face tight with stress. Miss Ramirez, please come in. The room was full. Board members, security personnel, legal team, all eyes turned to her as she entered. A laptop sat open at the head of the table, displays showing more angles of yesterday's incident. Miss Ramirez, began an older man she recognized as the head of operations. We've reviewed the complete security footage from yesterday's incident. Maria stood straight, channeling 2 decades of professional poise. Yes, sir. We've also reviewed your entire employment history. He gestured to a stack of papers. 20 years, not a single complaint until yesterday. The complaint is invalid, came a sharp voice. Maria turned to see Sarah Chen, head of building security. She followed every protocol exactly as trained. The footage proves it. Patricia Hammond cleared her throat. The issue isn't just about protocols. This has become a PR situation. The video has over 10 million views. Major news networks are asking for statements. Good. Sarah cut in again. Let them see what real security professionalism looks like. Let them see what happens when someone finally holds the privileged accountable to the same rules as everyone else. Murmurs rippled through the room. Maria's fingers found the envelope in her pocket, still unopened. The head of operations raised his hand for silence. Miss Ramirez, do you have anything to say? Maria thought of Jenny's proud face, reading her college acceptance. Of her mother's quiet strength. Of her father's words about dignity. Yes, sir. I've worked here for 20 years. In that time, I've checked thousands of IDs. Celebrities, politicians, business leaders, they all show their badges. They understand it's about safety, not status. She took a deep breath. I'm not ashamed of doing my job. I'm proud of it. The room fell silent. Patricia Hammond looked at her laptop, then back at Maria with wide eyes. Miss Ramirez, you might want to see this. She turned the laptop around. A new video was trending, security footage from 6 months ago. Maria recognized it immediately. A well-known actor, politely showing his ID. Don Jr. in the background, watching. The actor saying something that made Maria smile. Comments flooded the video. See? He showed ID, no problem. Real celebrities understand security. Don Jr. was right. They're seeing how it's done. The head of operations cleared his throat. Well, Miss Ramirez? It seems the public has made their opinion clear. He nodded to Patricia. Show her the statement. Patricia handed Maria a press release. Her hands shook as she read the first line. Trump Tower stands firmly behind our security protocols and the employees who enforce them. The envelope in her pocket suddenly felt heavy. Maria pulled it out, finally opening it. Inside was a single piece of paper, official letterhead, signed by the board. As she read, tears filled her eyes. But for the first time in 2 days, they were tears of relief. Effective immediately, Maria Ramirez is promoted to head of guest relations for all Trump properties in New York City. This position includes oversight of security protocols and staff training. The salary figure made her gasp. Jenny's college tuition wouldn't be a problem anymore. Additionally, Patricia Hammond added, the board would like you to help develop new security training procedures. Your methods should become our standard. Sarah Chen smiled. Sometimes doing the right thing pays off. Maria's phone buzzed, a text from Jenny. Mom, TMZ just posted an old video of Don Jr. getting denied entry last year when he forgot his ID. Some other receptionist made him go get it. The head of operations cleared his throat. There's one more thing, Miss Ramirez. Mr. Trump Jr. and Miss Guilfoyle's team has requested a meeting. Maria's stomach tightened. When? Tomorrow morning. They want to. He checked his notes, addressed the situation. You don't have to meet them, Sarah Chen said quickly. Legal can handle it. Maria thought for a moment. Number, I'll meet them. She straightened her blazer. Some things need to be said face to face. As she left the conference room, employees lined the hallway. Sophie broke from the crowd, hugging her tight. I saw the announcement. Head of guest relations. Did you post that old video of the actor showing his ID? Maria asked, suspicious. Sophie grinned. Maybe. Or maybe it was Jim from security. Or Janet from maintenance. We all have footage of you doing your job perfectly. Back at her desk, Maria found a stack of letters, handwritten notes from residents, thanking her for years of service. For remembering their children's names. For keeping them safe. Her phone buzzed again. Thomas Reynolds. Ready to start changing things around here, boss? Maria smiled, touching her father's pearl earrings. Tomorrow would bring another confrontation, but this time she'd meet it from a position of strength. They'd tried to shame her for being the help. Instead, they'd helped her prove exactly how essential she was. Looking around the lobby, her lobby now, Maria felt 20 years of pride settle into something new, something stronger. Let them come tomorrow. She had nothing to be ashamed of, and everything to be proud of. Maria arrived early the next morning wearing her best suit. Not the navy blazer this time, but a charcoal gray pantsuit she'd bought for Jenny's graduation. Her new security badge read Head of Guest Relations, and its weight felt right against her hip. Sophie met her at the entrance, practically bouncing with excitement. They're already here. In the small conference room on 3. They're early? Maria checked her watch. 45 minutes before the scheduled meeting time. Their PR guy made them come early, said something about avoiding more cameras. The lobby had returned to its normal bustle, but Maria noticed something different. Every employee she passed stood a little straighter, smiled a little wider. Pride had replaced fear. Thomas Reynolds waited by the elevator. Ready? Almost. Maria touched her father's pearl earrings for luck. How do they seem? Nervous. Thomas smiled slightly. Turns out the board wasn't happy about them breaking security protocols, especially after that YouTuber incident last month. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. Maria used the time to center herself, remembering her father's words about dignity. The conference room door was closed. Through the frosted glass, she could see several figures moving around. Thomas knocked once, then opened the door. Don Jr. sat at the table, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit. Kimberly sat beside him, her usual confident pose slightly wilted. A man in glasses, obviously the PR representative, stood near the window, typing frantically on his phone. Miss Ramirez, the PR man stepped forward immediately. Thank you for meeting us. I'm David Cohen from. Let them speak for themselves, Maria said quietly, taking a seat across the table. That's why we're here, isn't it? Don Jr. shifted in his chair. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Kimberly finally spoke. "Miss Ramirez, She glanced at the PR man, who nodded encouragingly. "We want to apologize for our behavior." Maria waited, her face neutral. Don Jr. cleared his throat. "We were wrong. Very wrong. The way we treated you was inexcusable." "Why?" Maria asked simply. "Why?" Don Jr. blinked, caught off guard. "Yes. Why was it inexcusable? I want to understand exactly what you're apologizing for." The PR man started to speak, but Maria held up her hand. "Number. Let them answer." Kimberly's face flushed. "We treated you like you were beneath us, like the rules didn't apply to us, like your job didn't matter." "But it does matter," Don Jr. added quickly. "After the board meeting yesterday, they showed us the security breaches you've prevented, the incidents you've handled. 20 years of protecting this building, protecting our family's name." Maria nodded slowly. "The rules exist for everyone's safety, even yours." "We know that now," Kimberly said. "We should have known it before. The board made it very clear how many threats you've stopped over the years." The PR man stepped forward again. "Miss Ramirez, we've prepared a statement for social media, apologizing publicly and—" "Number." Maria's voice was firm. "No?" Don Jr. looked confused. "No public statement. No social media apology. Those are just words for cameras." She leaned forward. "Instead, you're going to do something real." The PR man looked nervous. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Maria pulled out a folder, her first act as head of guest relations. "New security protocols. Everyone, including family members, will attend training sessions. Everyone will follow the same rules. No exceptions." "That's—" Don Jr. started to object, then stopped himself. "Actually, that makes sense." "And," Maria continued, "you're both going to take the first training session. Today. With me." Kimberly's eyes widened. "Today? Unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're not cooperating with new security measures?" The PR man was practically dancing with anxiety. "Miss Ramirez, surely we can schedule this for a more convenient." "Now is convenient." Maria stood. "The training room is ready." To everyone's surprise, Don Jr. laughed. Actually laughed. "You know what? She's right. We deserved this." Kimberly started. "No, think about it. We acted like entitled brats, and she's making us take a safety class like children. It's actually kind of perfect." Maria led them to the training room, where Sophie waited with several other employees. The next hour was both awkward and oddly satisfying, watching Don Jr. and Kimberly learn basic security protocols, practice proper ID presentation, and even role-play various security scenarios. By the end, something had shifted. The tension had dissolved into something almost like respect. "Thank you, Miss Ramirez," Don Jr. said as they finished, actually sounding sincere. This was educational. Kimberly nodded. "We won't forget it." "No," Maria agreed. "You won't. Because I'll be implementing these training sessions across all Trump properties in New York." The PR man, who'd watched the whole thing in helpless silence, finally found his voice. "So, we're good here? No public statements needed?" Maria smiled. "Actions speak louder than social media posts, Mr. Cohen. They've done what I asked. That's enough." Later that evening, as Maria rode the subway home, her phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. "Mom, have you seen the new security badges? They're amazing." Maria smiled. The badges had been her first project. Sleek, professional, and impossible to duplicate. Even Don Jr. had seemed impressed when she'd explained the security features. Another text came through, this one from Thomas Reynolds. "Board loved the training session. Want to implement it company-wide. You've started something big here." Maria touched her father's pearl earrings, thinking of his words about dignity. She hadn't just kept hers. She'd helped others find theirs too. The subway doors opened at her stop. As she walked home, she passed the same newsstand where she'd first seen her viral video playing. Now the screens showed something different. Security footage of Don Jr. and Kimberly carefully presenting their IDs to Sophie at the front desk, following the new protocols perfectly. Sometimes, Maria thought, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making things better. about turning humiliation into change, about standing your ground until others realize why it matters. Her phone buzzed one more time, an email about tomorrow's management meeting. Tomorrow, she'd start implementing changes across all Trump properties. Tomorrow, she'd begin training a new generation of security professionals who understood that rules protected everyone equally. But tonight? Tonight, she'd go home to her family, to Jenny's proud smile and her mother's cooking, knowing she'd won something more valuable than any viral video could capture. She'd won respect. Not just for herself, but for every worker who'd ever been looked down on, talked down to, or treated as less than human. And that was the sweetest justice of all. The changes Maria implemented spread far beyond Trump Tower. Within months, her security protocols became the standard across New York's luxury buildings. Other properties started calling, asking her to train their staff. "Mom, you're famous in the right way now," Jenny said one evening, showing her a business magazine article. The Security Revolutionary. How one receptionist changed luxury building protocol. Maria kept the article, but not for the publicity. She kept it for the last paragraph. In the end, the viral video that was meant to shame a worker became a catalyst for change. Now, when you enter any major building in New York, you'll find staff who stand their ground with professionalism and dignity, just like Maria Ramirez did. Don Jr. and Kimberly kept their word. Every time they entered the building, they presented their IDs without complaint. Other residents followed suit, creating a culture of mutual respect. 1 year later, Maria stood at the podium of a security conference, addressing hundreds of property managers and security professionals. Her navy blazer hung framed in her new office, a reminder of where she'd started. "Security isn't about power," she told them. "It's about respect. Respect for the rules that keep us all safe. Respect for the people who enforce those rules. And most importantly, respect for ourselves." In the audience, Jenny beamed with pride. She'd graduated college now, working on her own career in corporate security. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, Maria would arrive early at Trump Tower, standing in the lobby where it all happened. She'd watch the sunrise reflect off the golden doors, remembering the day she'd stood her ground. They'd tried to make her feel small. Instead, they'd helped her realize just how big she could be. And that was a lesson worth more than any viral video could capture.